He did, yeah.
Did our meeting whenever you're ready.
Okay. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. With all who wish, join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a quick reminder, you have 2 hours left to vote if you haven't voted. Only thing on it is the school budget, but please do vote. Don't have any agenda adjustments to propose. Anybody on the board want an agenda adjustment? Hearing none, consideration of the minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes of May 27th, 2025 as presented. Is there a second? I will second. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? In person, so you may vote by hand. Actually, Meredith, you want to introduce Sophia too?
Absolutely. We'd like to welcome Sophia Tatunik. She is our new student board representative who will be serving in this role for the next 2 school years. She'll join Connor. Connor sends his regrets he's at the state track meet tonight. So thank you, Sophia, for jumping into this role on very short notice to have to make sure students' voice was present tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. Welcome. And as we kind of discussed, you're welcome to jump in at any, you're basically like one of us up here, so you're welcome to jump in at any point that you wish to.
Thank you.
Yep. Warrants, I would make a motion to approve payroll warrant 25 and regular warrant 25. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next up, public comment, but I'm going to point out this is a generic public comment, not related to cell phones. Okay. We will have a couple of other quick things. We will have a couple of reports from directors and superintendents, and then we will get to the cell phone topic. We will have a presentation of research and findings and recommendations from the administration. We will have public comment. Everybody who's here will get a chance to speak. I don't see so many people. We have to cap the number of speakers. So we'll have public comment at that point, and then we'll have a board discussion at that point. We will not have a board vote tonight. Big issues that we expect that there's a lot of public interest in. We make a point of stretching across 2 consecutive board meetings so people don't feel like we're sneaking it in or sneaking under the wire. So we'll have a discussion tonight. We'll take a vote in 2 weeks. So I just want to be clear about the process, but the floor is now open for public comment on anything except cell phone topics. Anybody want to speak on anything except cell phones? Not surprised. We'll go ahead and move on. So we'll start with acknowledgements. Jake?
Acknowledge the end of the year. Thank you. Coming real soon.
Yeah, in a specific instance of that, I would acknowledge another fantastic graduation. Sam and Meredith and Meredith, and I'm sure a lot of teachers and other people too put a lot of time and energy into that. And I know Sam got through a lot of curveballs this year in particular and rose above them all. So thank you. It was a fantastic graduation as always. Really keeps the students centered, and they don't go on too long, but they celebrate the students. So I appreciate that. Kevin.
Yeah, I forgot my notes. I was going to read off all of the excellent UTC students from Orono, but I left my list. I will mention that Asia Marzilli was mentioned numerous times during our last meeting in terms of being an exemplary student overall, graduating with her associate's degree, pursuing public policy, has taken over the social media channels for UTC, and has done such a good job that the sort of consortium of CTE schools have hired her on for the summer to improve their social media channels. So it speaks very well for Orono's representation in UTC. And second acknowledgement is just a shout out to ASA and all the fun activities they're doing for the kids to make the end of school year memorable. Thank you.
Great. Noah?
Sorry to interrupt you with my audio clip there, but I'll just say to continue what I was saying last time, I've been taking pictures around the district, and one of the things that it just strikes me, some of the pictures of like kids with so much joy, like running up the hill, like doing the outside stuff or the different like engagement things that I've seen. It's just like there's a lot of like happiness out there that the teachers nurture and that we produce, and I just am really grateful for that. So I'll show you some pictures sometime.
Yeah, just put a slideshow together,
Yeah.
not the ones where they pause for 30 seconds on every picture.
No, it's like these like pure just like frolicking and happiness and it's
Great.
nice to see that, so.
Art,
Nothing, thank you.
okay, not to put you on the spot, but you're welcome if you want to acknowledge anything.
I'm good.
Yeah, the very first minutes. Meredith,
Well, mine was similar to a couple of others. Just want to acknowledge the staff who go the extra mile to make all of the end of year celebrations, special activities, acknowledgements of student growth and achievement, and certainly our festivities for our graduating class. It takes a lot to make those happen, and just thanks to all the staff who make those things so special for our students and their families.
great, thank you. We'll go ahead and move into reports. We'll start with director reports. Lisa,
Sure. We did receive, our local entitlement allocation, budget for what we'll be getting for school year 25-26. It went up $10,000, so we're at $210,489, which definitely we'll find a good use for. That's for the school age. For the preschool, we have 6,000, which again, that's up a couple thousand, and we've had a hard time using that in the past. But with recent supports and testing for some of our preschoolers and therapies, we've been able to use that money. We also received an estimate for our allocation for a 3-4-year-old program. And that looks like that's based on the 9 students that they have in our catchment area right now. I believe 5 of those are getting services and 4 are in referral. And that was at $122,511. And that, that will be reevaluated in October after that first quarter. And that's kind of when they'll raise it or lower it for the year. We've also established for the 3-4 program, we're getting applications for a teaching position. I believe I filled one of the ed tech positions, so I'm kind of excited about that. We've got our equipment and materials all listed out. We're kind of waiting for the July 1st date to come so we can start our ordering to prepare for the classroom materials that we're going to be able to get. So summer school is exploding this year. We've got at ASA, we've got 48 students that are participating. We have 25 that are getting ESY, extended school year services. For special education, we have 20 in the Summer Stars program, and then we have 3 students in out of district placements that will also be participating in summer programming. We have 55 kids at OMS. We have that large 6th grade coming up, and many of them are choosing to participate in that summer enrichment program. We have 35 for the enrichment program, 19 for the extended school year, and then 1 that is in and out of district placement. And also at the high school, we have a large number of students. We have 44, 25 of which are going to be in the enrichment program for our ESY, and 15 will be participating in that geometry class. But it's interesting every year, the people that are kind of running the program and planning for the activities just said, this just snowballs every year. We're getting more and more students, so it's exciting that they want to come back and participate during the summer, that they're making these connections and relationships, and this is where they want to be. So as far as that goes, otherwise we've been interviewing for different positions, and I think we'll probably be covering a little bit of that later, but that's what I have for tonight. Anybody has any questions?
any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Director of Learning, Susan.
Susan, would you mind coming to the podium? The podium.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I thought we were gonna defer until the ASA curriculum.
Oh, so that's,
Is that
yes,
okay?
she's not gonna give a
Nothing
different,
to report.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
We'll do it later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of things on the agenda tonight.
Yeah.
So, okay, anything?
Yes, I had just a few other different items, making sure the camera's working for me. Yeah, I'm gonna zoom. We had a resignation come in, one of our ed techs who has also been filling in for as long-term sub in our band, music teacher position. Brandon Cockrum resigned. He's leaving the area, so we really appreciate his contributions in all roles, but particularly the way he stepped in and helped maintain that programming this year. So wish him well. As most probably know, last day of school Thursday is an early release, and we look forward to sending students off with lots of fun throughout the rest of the week for K through 8. 9 through 12 is maybe not as fun this week, but you know, it's maybe satisfying to finish courses, right? We do have another interview committee we're establishing and need a board rep for. It's for the early childhood special education position, the 3-4-year-old program that Lisa mentioned, the new programming. And Lisa, when do you plan on doing that?
Probably not till July. We really want to wait for some candidates.
Yeah, we're hoping to have more candidates.
I dropped the ball on the last one, so I'm happy to step up for this one.
Well,
Sorry,
hi.
Lisa.
Reach out to you when it's time, Lisa. We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
I know that most people are aware of the bridge project. We did not find out until we knew it was probably starting this week. We found that out Wednesday or so last week. But we didn't really know details until it was out. So we forwarded that along and just gave some information, and we appreciate everyone's patience and for buses and, you know, folks to try to figure out new transportation routes. You know, we're certainly going to be understanding as people adjust this week with tardies and such. Just ask people to try to make extra or give themselves extra time, and if you're in town across the river, consider walking or biking because it's likely faster. Just to kind of underscore, this is a state project that the town really didn't have any input in scheduling other than to suggest they not do it while university is also in session, which I think was a wise request, and I also supported that same request in thinking. So I know it seems a little surprising that it's happening right now, but it is what it is. We'll enjoy the bridge once it's repaved. And Brian said, reminder, if new people have logged on, an hour and 45 minutes now to go and vote. The school budget is the only item on the ballot today. So everything else is in the agenda, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Next up, we come to the cell phone policy. Come on in, there's just a couple seats up front. And we're gonna start with a presentation and then we'll get to the public comment. Come on in, don't hesitate, there's seats up front.
So we're going to begin by sharing.
Actually, sorry, before you jump in.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Anybody who hasn't signed up and wants to speak, please go ahead and sign up. If you're here in person, you can sign up on the podium. And if you're on Zoom, just type your name into the chat box and we'll make sure to incorporate you. But I just want to get the sign up process going so we can jump right into public comment once the presentation's done. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you for adding that. So I'm going to just, okay, yes. Just give a little bit of background, then turn it over to Meredith Diamond to talk through some slides, and then I'm going to jump back in as well. We all know this topic has been brewing around the really around the world and certainly in our own community. Just thinking about this topic, and I would say for us, it's really been a growing conversation and source of kind of thinking about what the right answer is for our students in our school. And really that leads us to where we are today and wanting to have this public discussion around this issue. So Meredith's going to start with a little bit more background on how we arrived here today and some of the data we collected, and then recommendations that we're bringing forward for discussion.
So if you have been reading anything or watching anything or listening to anything, then you're likely aware that there's a kind of a building tension around the significance of phones in kids' lives. And that is something that in our building we have tried to address, but reached a critical point in March. We had a faculty meeting wherein the OHS faculty really felt like we have got to do something about this. And so subsequent to that, we formed the creatively titled RT26 Cell Phone Committee. And that was assembled, it was Meredith, me, Sam, Erica, Katie Quirk, and Richard. And we tried to put together a plan for how to understand this issue before the end of the year in an effort to bring to you today the results of our inquiry. And where that has led us is to a belief that we need an intentional school and district policy about phone and smartwatch access for the duration of the school day. This conversation has literally been evolving nationally as the conversation has been happening among our group. In April, New York instituted a statewide bell-to-bell ban requiring that phones be stored in all schools in the state of New York for the duration of the school day. They joined North Dakota, Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, and Louisiana, who also have full day bell-to-bell bans. And this is, a product of the fact that, almost every teenager now has either a smartwatch or a cell phone or both, and sometimes other connected devices like gaming consoles and iPads. The champion in the state right now is RSU 1. Their board implemented a bell-to-bell ban last June. They started the year with that ban, and their reports are that the results have been profound and that they just don't talk about phones anymore, which if you are an educator may sound a little utopian. We thought it did. In addition, the state has undertaken proposed legislation LD 1234 that was drafted initially as an effort to ban phones bell to bell, but in committee that was walked back in deference to Maine's commitment to local control, and is currently drafted to require all districts to adopt a policy regulating cell phones, but short of the bell-to-bell ban. So as it stands right now, at the high school, we've had the same policy for at least 3 years, if not 4. And that is that students can't use phones during instructional time. When they go to an instructional space, they put the phone in the place where that teacher has designated it needs to go, and it remains there for the duration of class. They're allowed to use phones during passing time and lunch. That's the policy. But in our data gathering, we learned that 55% of teachers at the high school report not being able to consistently enforce the policy in a fashion that is not unlike enforcing abstinence in an addict who has
high level classes. What do you know about it? But like,
I know a lot of.
At the middle school, the reality is different. Students are required to keep their phones in lockers for the duration of the day. This is something that is reported to work really successfully at the middle school, where students use their lockers as part of their daily routine. A few years ago, they loosened up that policy and realized quickly that it was a mistake, and so instituted it again and are finding success with that. At ASA, phones and other devices are discouraged. If students bring them to school, they are supposed to be powered off and stored in the backpack for the day. And the reality that they're living out is that that policy is working with very few deviations. So as part of our data gathering, we asked, teachers to, provide narrative perspective on, what this is like for them. And this was in part inspired by an op-ed published in the Bangor Daily a couple of months ago by Bangor High School English teacher Emily Throckmorton, that basically just asserted, I, as a veteran teacher with a great relationship with my students, am fighting this battle every single day in a way that is absolutely draining and undermining of the learning that's happening in the classroom. So a few quotes from Orono High School teachers It becomes an every block power struggle with the students to hand over their phones when they get into the room. I have so much I need to get through during the course of the class period, and it was very frustrating to spend at least the first 15 minutes of every single class block trying to retrieve the phone of every student. Another teacher said this primarily came down to having to fight the students to do it every time, and I just didn't always have the energy or bandwidth to fight it every time. And then finally, I do make a good faith attempt to implement it, but with students coming and going as they do, some fall through the cracks. Then it becomes a small battle to put the genie back into the bottle, and half a block of frustration is spent dealing with it every day.
And I would just say, you know, that's just 3 examples of a myriad of, you know, the same kind of sentiment expressed across the survey.
We did not get narrative feedback that said, this is going just fine. So there is, you know, as this problem has emerged and escalated, there has been a lot of discussion about, you know, different methods for dealing with it. Last year, the NEA conducted a survey of teachers to try to identify, like, where are phones actually not being disruptive? And what they found was that having the phone inaccessible to the student was really the only way to reach that level of not having the technology not disrupt the learning in the room. Other methods where teacher sets the rules, students can use it between classes, or students can keep the phone but they can't use it. There's a sharp distinction between the findings from those 3 categories. RSU 1 has collected data over the course of the year about their both quantitative and qualitative impacts of the use of Yonder pouches in their buildings. And, you know, some of them are pretty predictable and some of them are more surprising. They talked about the volume in the lunchroom being, you know, much louder due to the fact that students are talking to one another again. They talked about teachers feeling less tired and feeling better about their jobs, improved students' reports of mental health, increased use of the health center, and a sharp decrease in the number of dismissals for student-reported illness. Because they said in their old model, what would happen is that instead of going to the health center and getting talking with health professionals about how they were feeling, instead they would just text home and ask to be dismissed. Improved academic performance, decreased failure rates, improved submission of assignments and work completion. You know, lots more connection between students, and a number or significant increase in the number of books checked out of the library. So as you may anticipate, we saw differences in adults and students reporting of their feelings about this question. When asked, does my school have an effective cell phone policy? OMS, you know, there was much more parity between how the adults and the students responded. But this distinction between OHS staff and OHS students sort of gives you a sense of the difference between adult and student perceptions of whether the OHS policy is working well.
I'm trying to make that less.
Do people think that cell phones have a somewhat or profoundly negative impact on the learning environment? Here we see more of a distinction between staff and students at the middle school. About 30% of students feel like there's a negative impact, whereas about almost 80% of staff do. But at the high school, it's a different story. We have almost 90% of staff saying that cell phones have a negative impact on the learning environment, whereas just over 20% of students report that they do. A much more consistent disparity across buildings about the impact of face-to-face interactions among students. At the high school, you know, staff see a significant impact on face-to-face interactions among students. Students don't see it as a big deal. It's very similar at the middle school. Sherry Turkle did a TED Talk about 10 years ago at this point about her observations of the impact of cell phones on communication. And she was interviewing a college student about his confidence in having in-person conversations. And she, you know, and he said he, you know, wasn't really confident about it at all. And she said, well, is that something you'd like to learn? And he said, well, maybe eventually, but not now. And I think that that reflects maybe the sentiment that you may recognize if you ask a teenager to call a restaurant to make a reservation or really use the phone for any purpose. And then we get our sharpest distinction of all when we ask adults and students if they would like a stricter bell-to-bell phone policy. It's, you know, it's almost polar opposites. There are a handful of OHS students who do think that it would benefit us to have a stricter bell-to-bell phone-free policy. And the staff think it is absolutely necessary. Notable in this category is the number of OMS parents who think that a bell-to-bell phone policy would benefit us. We're at almost 80% of the parent respondents from the middle school, which to me reflects a trajectory of parent perspective on this issue as kids go from, you know, being the kind of, or potentially cell phone oblivious, you know, students at ASA to being surrounded by them in high school, and that sense of parents recognizing the impacts that they're seeing it have. OMS students are not that enthusiastic. About half of OMS staff think that it would be good, but half think it's okay. And almost 60% of OHS parents think that it's a good idea to go phone-free bell-to-bell.
One of the things in the OMS staff is the OMS staff have a bell-to-bell. And so I think the rate there needs some context, because I think a lot of the comments around OMS staff was, well, what we're doing with our bell-to-bell policy now is working. So I think that the question for them was a little bit difficult to answer. So it's probably a little bit of a flawed question for OMS, since they have that policy in place now. So we were asking, do you want to go more strict with our bell-to-bell policy? And then for OHS parents, what's a little maybe more context there as well. I think it was right around a third that were not supportive of a stricter bell-to-bell phone policy, and then we had a handful, like 5 to 6%, who were neutral. And so that's kind of how those numbers settled out, maybe with that neutral middle ground. So it's not quite 2/3 to 1/3, but almost.
This figure really resonated with me. The idea that this technology that in theory lives entirely outside the relationship between students and teachers in a classroom has had a substantial impact in a negative way on how teachers feel about the work that they're doing. 69% of Orono High School faculty reported that phones in the classroom has decreased their enjoyment in being a teacher. And even at the middle school, where there is a bell-to-bell policy that does keep them out of the classroom for the duration of instruction, even then, 64% of teachers said that cell phones have negatively impacted their feeling about their work with students.
So I'm going to pick up the next few slides here. A couple of the themes that came out in the survey around what are some of the big concerns people have if they have concerns about moving to a more strict bell-to-bell policy. And one is, I like to be able to get in touch with my child through their cell phone. And so we had, you know, offered
like met him, was hanging out with him, just like that one time. Told me his name was Luke. I didn't really ever hang out with him again for the whole school year. And the next school year,
I can't tell if I'm muted or not.
We were out at a football game one night.
all right, there. Sorry, trying to.
You want to make me a co-host so I could?
Yes, I
people?
do. That was challenging for me because I have Rachel's computer here. Let me find you on the screen. Oh, there you are. Oh, I think Rachel had to do it by this one. My apologies, just a moment.
While we're waiting, can I ask what a yonder pouch is?
Yeah, we're gonna show you.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Shouldn't have been that difficult. Okay, now where is my?
Sorry, maybe that wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it's my,
The tab up at the
oh,
top.
it's here. Is it that? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so one of the concerns was around communicating with their child, and our question was, would you be comfortable with an alternative method, kind of like when a lot of the parents in the room were in school. If someone needed to reach you at school with a message, you would call the office, leave a message, and that message would be relayed to the student. And so in addition to that, though, at least in middle and high school, our students have one-to-one devices, and so there's also the option of emailing or Google Chat. So 96% of ASA parents were comfortable with that alternative method, 87% of OMS and 67% of OHS parents are comfortable with that. That, you know, is a stronger comfort level than the last question that we talked about of the support for the move. So, you know, more parents are comfortable thinking about an alternative method of communication. I have to get back to my screen where I'm making this happen. Okay, so another one that was a commonly cited reason for folks' discomfort with a bell-to-bell restriction at the high school specifically, and even on the other surveys, was thinking about emergency scenarios and wanting to be able to know their child was okay, to contact their child, get information from their child, and their child having the ability to access their phone to do so. So we asked our law enforcement partner at OPD to weigh in on this. And Chief Merrill, thank you for being here tonight. Chief Merrill cited really some research from the National School Safety and Security Services Division, which has, you know, a lot of research on topic around school safety. And you know, there's certainly different viewpoints on this, but I think the prevailing viewpoint is that in a true emergency, we want students really focused on listening to directions they're being given, being aware of their surroundings, and being concerned about a cell phone and obtaining the cell phone from maybe the corner box or wherever it is in the room, and or sending messages or receiving communications can really put them and others at risk. And there's some other information cited here. We had a firsthand experience some of this about 7 years ago when we had, thank goodness, a false alarm here at the school, but it was an all-out deployment of a lockdown scenario at the school. If you've lived in the community that long, you probably remember that. And what I remember is that there were parents here in the parking lot before some first responders were able to get here from some of our surrounding communities that actually, you know, made it difficult for first responders to reach the school. And secondly, we had some misinformation going around. In fact, the whole thing was caused by a student reporting something via their cell phone at another school that was happening that was misinterpreted and caused our lockdown. So that's really a concrete example of how, you know, the student communication in those scenarios when emotions are heightened and you know, the adrenaline's kicked in, can not always help the situation for lots of reasons. Finally, I think, the idea of, just clogging the network when first responders are really trying to communicate, with lots of cell phones going off can be problematic. And, I think all parents want to be able to hear their child's voice in those scenarios. And I think that our plan that we've come up with for the high school maybe is the best possible option to have cell phones accessible when it's safe to access them with the Yonder pouch that we'll show you in a moment. So Chief Merrill's going to be here during Q&A and during public comment in case you have more questions for him. But I think that this is probably the biggest piece of feedback we got for a reason why folks were uncomfortable with it. I'll just also add here that our school is fortunate enough to have a school safety grant that we're doing virtually all the projects this summer, coincidentally. And so one of the things we're going to be implementing next year as part of that is the badge alert system for all staff, and more audible sirens and messaging going out in the event of emergency. So, I think while maybe parents have concerns in this realm from their perspective, just know that safety is a priority of our school, and we're always thinking about how we can enhance and improve sorry, our emergency response. Can you take the next slide while I drink water?
So we have, considered what are cases in which the removal of access to a phone would undermine a student's ability to learn. And we have looked at in surrounding or across the state really, examples for how exceptions have been carved out. And so what we are proposing is that, primarily exceptions are really limited, and they are based on needs that are outlined in either a health-based 504 plan, or an individual language acquisition plan for multilingual learners. And the hope there is that in those plans, the need for an exception would be articulated in a way that would allow for authorization by a building administrator to say this student needs their phone because of this critical reason. In Bath, those reasons right now are they have not carved out an exception for language learners. Their exceptions are only for students who need them for like insulin pump monitoring or heart issue monitoring. Those are the two examples. But the framing is such that even with those exceptions, the devices would only need to be used in accordance with the needs that are outlined in those plans, right? So for example, the student who needs a phone to monitor their insulin pump is not going to be walking down the hall on Snapchat. Like that would be something that would have to lead to a meeting to recalibrate, that accessibility. But in talking with Eric, our multilingual learner teacher, it was emphasized that the significance of access to home and the significance of access to translation services, for some of those students is critical enough that it merits a carve out for this policy.
So as I said, we talked about the middle school policy, we talked about the ASA policy, and we talked about the current high school policy. And when we were thinking about why is the high school policy the one that's not working, and what would be a potential solution for that, the first question was, well, why doesn't the high school do what the middle school's doing if it's working there? And the folks at the high school, I think, who see this day in, day out, high school kids just don't use their lockers in the way that middle school students do. Largely, I think because of the building being such a long building, and sometimes your locker might be on the other end of the building from where you have classes and the time of class change. And so that would require a whole, an additional shift of students to use lockers if we were to say now cell phones have to be kept in lockers. And so we knew about the Yonder pouch from RSU 1, and it's been reported in the news, and got some information about this option. You can see a picture of it here in the bottom corner. It's really just a it's a heavy duty cloth kind of fabric pouch that folds at the top and it just clicks into place. And you know, it's easy enough to slip into any kind of bag or backpack. It's very thin, low profile. So you know, it's widely used. The rep gave us these numbers. So over 2 million students using these in 35 countries. So each student in the high school would be issued a pouch and they would carry their around themselves in their bag. Their phone, smartwatch would be locked inside during the school day. And the way the pouch is unlocked is by a patented magnet that they will sell as part of the package that we would buy if we go this route. And you just simply touch the pouch to the magnet and it pops open. So they recommend you have magnet stations at all your exits that you know are used for entry and exit, as well as some portable magnets. He mentioned as we have what we call go bags for emergency response that are kind of filled with all the things you need in emergency response. Often schools have them in there. Sometimes they'll have them and issue them for I don't know, field trips, bus, things like that. He mentioned we can buy extra if we decide that the ones that they give as their ratios don't quite meet our needs. We also, I think Bath has one on the outside of the school in the event a student leaves and forgets to unlock their pouch. They can, you know, come out to the back door of the school and it's outside on the wall. And so the cost is a one-time cost. There's not a recurring cost. It's $30 per pouch. We envision this much like the laptop cases and the, you know, one-to-one devices. It's issued to them at no cost, but if it's lost or damaged, then they would pay to replace it if they want to continue to have a phone at school. That includes professional development, communication tools and resources, training, that's PD, and a ratio of, I think, 1/60, they give the magnetic either base or the portable base for you to decide how you want to use. There is a video they sent and I could show it if folks are interested, but it's pretty simple design.
Two other elements, if I may, Meredith, of the Yonder pouches as potentially a solution for the high school, that could get us closer to the middle school's reality of really just not having phones. One is that we have students coming and going from the building often. You know, we have students who go to college classes, students who go to UTC. And so the idea of having a phone at a fixed location introduces friction to that system where the student then needs to go retrieve the phone from wherever it is if they have, you know, stored it there. Additionally, with phones stored in lockers, if there were a true emergency and we did have an evacuation and students would want to be contacting home, there would be no way for those phones to be retrieved from the locker as part of the evacuation. And so the other advantage of the Yonder pouch is that it allows for the phone to remain in the possession of the student, just not usable by them, you know, during the period that it's locked.
So where does this lead us? We're asking for two things, really. ASA and the middle school are working well, not asking for a change in that policy. But we're asking for the board to support OHS moving to a bell-to-bell restriction on cell phone use beginning this fall. And that over the summer into the fall, that the board work on the development of a policy to support all the schools' bell-to-bell restriction that has been, you know, in place for some time for ASA and OMS, but would support that for all the schools in the district. And that would be something that we would have to continue on into the fall, just given where we are in the school year. So that's what we have come to as a committee. We thought about, you know, do we draft policy? We looked at Portland Public Schools is in the process tonight. I think they're meeting on their policy. But there's a lot to this, and I think we need to just, you know, have some deliberation as we consider the policy and what belongs in the policy versus in kind of handbook level decision making. But, you know, having the board support for the change at the high school, I think would be a step in the direction that we're hoping the board will walk with us. So that's the information we have to share.
Okay,
But do you have anything else to add before we turn it over to public comment?
We did outline, if you click on,
Oh, yeah.
the policy, so we took a shot at, you know, what would the daily lived reality of this look like, if we were to implement this
Oh.
in high school?
This is a PDF,
Oh, okay.
but I have that.
Well, folks who are looking at this in real time, and, you know, essentially, we talked about what the consequences would be. We had a faculty meeting last week in which we had, you know, some folks ask, well, you know, what if students just don't put it in the pouch? What if they get a dummy phone and put the dummy phone in the pouch and they have their actual phone still on them? And what, you know, we learned from Bath was that the real issue is creating an environment wherein this thing that everyone has with them all the time is no longer there. So that the work that can be done when we have each other's full attention and we can put our full attention on our learning, so that those things can happen. And so the daily procedures really focus on students who have their phone for whatever reason, whether they've unlocked their pouch, they've cut their pouch open, they've thrown their pouch away, they, you know, use the dummy phone, they put a container of deodorant in the pouch, which was one thing that we heard. So that folks who have managed to keep their phones will get it taken away and their parent has to come and get it, right? So there's that consequence of, this isn't just, you know, Ms. Runko in the hall telling me, you know, I shouldn't have my phone. This is, my mother has to come here and get it, and I don't get it until my mother picks it up, and my mother has work tonight, so my mother actually can't come until tomorrow, so I have to go without my phone until tomorrow. Right, just creating an environment in which that is a real looming consequence, so that we can get back to learning the way that we used to.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. That was an informative presentation. So just to recap, we're gonna have public comment. Board will have a discussion tonight, and then we'll have a vote in 2 weeks. We split that up just so that there's full transparency and everybody has a chance to know the process is going on and feel like they've weighed in on it. So public comment, sign up, either type your name into the Zoom chat or sign up. We will only be able to take signups tonight. Just to briefly explain, there's a ton of other business to happen tonight. We have 3 teachers to hire. We have a major overhaul of the literacy curriculum at ASA to go through. We have meetings with every director, every administrator in the district, and they all have to be at work tomorrow morning at 7:30 or 8 a.m. Right, so, and by law, this is the only time the board can meet to do those kinds of business. So it's not like we don't want to hear from you, but we very much want to hear from you, but we also just have to keep it focused. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use lists for normal meetings without so many people. It's much more informal. It's just anybody who wants to speak can speak. But tonight I'm going to go off a list and I'm going to put a 2-minute time limit on. I'll set a timer. You have 10 seconds left. I'm going to start, you know, waving my hand, and when you hear 2 minutes, you will hear the shame bell start to go off. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'll probably just alternate. Yeah, they look roughly equal in size. I'll probably just alternate between in the room and off the Zoom. Please do identify yourself at least by first name. It's not required, but if you want to identify your role as a parent, a student, a teacher, that may be of interest to people. Comments that just get up and say, I'm on this side and I agree with these points are perfectly appropriate comments. Good, quick way to win friends on the board by keeping your comments short. But I know this is a town of Orono. We love a good intellectual discussion. So if you got 2 minutes of points, go for that too. So I'm going to start with David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Miller. I am a teacher here at OHS, a parent of a student at OHS, and a resident of Orono. I have inflicted the full 11 pages on you via email. So an intervention is needed. After decades of practicing law and with decades still ahead of me, I changed careers to pursue my true calling as an English teacher. I'm here today because I love these students, these children, our kids, too much to stay silent about what I'm witnessing. We are facing an epidemic of addiction, and our children are in crisis. They sit together but scroll alone, lost behind handheld screens. They possess remarkable emotional, intellectual, and interpersonal potential, but far too many simply cannot get engaged enough to even come to school or stay for a whole day or stay in a class focused for the whole class. They desperately defend devices. They're actively destroying their capacities for sustained attention, development of personal authenticity, and meaningful face-to-face communication. These are skills that will determine their future success in life, in relationships, in careers, in post-secondary education, and in our democracy. As with any addiction, their reflexive grasping and pervasive denial comes from a visceral place. Their very biology has become imbalanced and is actively tipping over into a compulsion to seek the continuous rapid-fire dopamine hits that are supplied by mainlining social media and games via their handheld electronic devices, not to mention gambling and pornography. The measures we tried based upon our current policy are only enabling the problem. And like any enabler, we must face our role with brutal honesty and recognize that uncomfortable changes are needed on our own part. Our love for them demands it.
Perfect timing. Done just like an English teacher, thank you. Also did want to acknowledge, we have one other comment received from Daniel Strain, who wasn't able to be here tonight. We don't formally read things out loud into the record, but also a teacher and a parent who spoke from the perspective of limiting cell phones. Next up, I'm going to call Eric Blacksmith. Go ahead and unmute and
First, I would like to quickly apologize if there is any loud barking or banging. My 8-month-old puppy is in my lap trying to get my attention. Good evening. My name is Eric Blacksmith, and I'm an educator here at RSU 26, specifically our district's multilingual learner educator. I'm here before you today not to discuss my capacity as an educator and what I see in my students, but to share my personal struggles with my phone as a young professional. The discussions that the district has been having about our students' phone usage challenged me to do some self-reflection. When I began teaching 2 years ago, I was freshly 21 in a 9th through 12th grade French teaching position, and I used my phone constantly. While I initially reasoned that I was using it as a tool to help explain concepts and words in French, it was always mere inches away. Moving from that position into subbing, both at RSU 26 and RSU 34, that temptation grew even stronger. I had so much free time when students weren't in the room, so I figured, hey, what's the harm in spending some time on my phone? Then it turned into, well, now they're all working quietly. How about I check a few notifications because my phone has been buzzing off the hook and it might be important. It took a student asking me why I was on my phone as a sub to realize how much I relied upon, no, craved this device. Now I have multiple stopgaps set up on my phone to limit my use. It changes to a simple interface during the workday. Most of my apps are blocked, yet still I find myself wanting to, and doing, checking it in between periods. I am almost 24, and I know that is still young by many standards, but I am old enough to have seen how phones have pervaded every aspect of my life, my students' lives, and my coworkers' lives. If I, as an adult and a professional, still struggle with this constant itch to use my phone, how can we expect our students to do the same without support from those around them? So I please can ask that you consider adopting the bell-to-bell policy to be that support that our students here at OHS need.
perfect, thank you. Next up, we'll go in the room, Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Dixon. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'm a parent of an OMS 7th grader, and I'm also an OHS English teacher. In fact, this week marks the end of my 23rd year of teaching. In addition to high school, I've taught middle school, I've taught at University of Maine, and I've taught overseas. And without hesitation, after all of that, I can say that cell phones in school are the #1 problem and barrier to student learning and building social skills. However, instead of talking about my own experiences with cell phones in our school, I'd like to share the voice of one of my 9th grade students, Connor, who could not join the meeting this evening, but asked that I share his thoughts. What follows are Connor's words. I think that phones make major distractions and prevent people from learning new things. For example, a guest speaker, Lynn Lyons, came to talk about anxiety, depression, and mental health. The assembly helped me with anxiety and lowered the occurrence of anxiety attacks. It also helped me identify the different types of thinkers and helped me understand the kind of thinker I am. For a presentation like this, it was pretty disappointing that there were phone alarms going off in the middle, which caused chaos and a major distraction in the assembly. This type of thing is why we're having this meeting tonight. I feel like all students could have benefited from the presentation if they had not had their phones out. The current policy in the high school, phones aren't allowed. You just heard all of that, so I'm gonna actually skip this part. But Connor mentions that middle school students are not allowed to have their phones at all. And in middle school, kids are more social. Middle school students are talking to each other and having more conversations with other people. In high school, more people are on their phones. I share Connor's words with you because this is but one instance of way too many to count when students missed out because of phone use in schools. I believe we have a responsibility to our students to make every single one of their days in our building matter. And ultimately, missed opportunities, such as the one Connor describes, are the fault of a policy that is not working. Moving to a bell-to-bell policy has great potential to make each day of high school a more meaningful experience for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Margie Ennis on Zoom.
Hello, I'm Margie Innes. I'm an Orono resident and also an Orono High School math teacher. I don't have a whole lot more to add other than what Dave, Eric, and Erica said, but I'll try to add a few more points. I really feel like cell phones are damaging relationships between not only students, but also between teachers and students. It used to be really easy to build good rapport with students, but it's really hard to reach them when they're hiding behind their screens. I think that the addictive nature of social media and the constant need for validation is negatively impacting students' mental health and well-being as well as their learning. And if they weren't addicted to the phones, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place. I think that the increase in anxiety is caused by a lot of cell phone and other screen time. I've never had so many students with 504 plans for anxiety, depression, and other mental disorders as I've had this year. And it's really hard for students to focus on learning when they're dealing with their mental disorders. I also have noticed a lot of cyberbullying this year. A few students have really been targeted with cyberbullying and harassment. Kids say dreadful things to each other when they're hiding behind a screen, so it's really hurtful to those who are targeted. Phones also help students cheat, and this undermines the integrity of the whole educational system. Our goal is for students to learn how to think and learn lifelong skills, and cheating doesn't allow this to happen. Students are spending less time engaging in face-to-face interactions. If you walk into the cafeteria at lunchtime, it'll probably bring you to tears when you see the students sitting at tables all on their phones, even though they're sitting together and not having conversations with each other. Even in the halls, students are on their phones. Oh, okay. So I really miss the days when cell phones weren't an issue and students were fully engaged and we could build good relationships with them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, Dara McIntyre, if I read that last name correctly.
Hi, yes, Dara McIntyre. I'm here as a parent of a middle schooler, and co-owner of a counseling business as well. So I know in the pandemic, I was reluctant to give either of my children a TV or a cell phone, but because they were alone a lot, because I still had to work, I gave in. And I let them have a TV and I let my fourth grader have a cell phone. Hated doing it. I didn't want to do it because back when Angus King wanted to give every high schooler a laptop, I remember I was not for that. So it's kind of was funny that I found myself giving them technology before I thought they were ready. But the one rule we instituted with them was to make eye contact, that if somebody walked in the room, that I need you to pause your phone or the TV and make eye contact, and that make people the priority, not the technology. So I somewhat feel embarrassed as a parent that you teachers have trouble teaching because our kids are distracted, that I take partial responsibility as a parent, thinking about all other parents and think, how did we fail you in that partnership somehow? That I think it's important that our kids see us as partners with you teachers, and that we not just let the kids run the show and let the technology run the show. And then as a therapist, one of the biggest things we talk about is the ability to be present and centered in the room. That the ability to make eye contact and be with somebody is everything. It's good mental health, and it's the backdrop of any learning. So I look forward to seeing how we can be partners with you teachers and support what you do. Because when I saw the report a few minutes ago and saw that the teachers, their love of learning has greatly diminished because of this, that makes me sad, and I don't want to lose good teachers. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have Dave Hamill from Zoom.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is David Hamill. I teach social studies at Orono High School and have for the past 9 years now at Orono. My first job in education was in 1998. If you asked 22-year-old me if I thought cell phones were going to be a problem in classrooms in the future, I'd say you were crazy, but here we are. What I want to comment on today was not necessarily what I'm seeing in OHS. I'm sure that topic will be covered and already has been covered. But what I really want to talk about is my observations at another Maine public high school that I was fortunate enough to experience. In April of this year, I visited a public school in Aroostook County as a part of the NEASC accreditation team. In day one of my 3.5 days there, I noticed just walking the halls that there were no phones in the classrooms or in the hallways held by the kids. There just weren't any. As it turns out, their policy was district-wide, all schools, no cell phones from bell to bell. And it had been in effect for quite a few years, at least some sort of policy for quite a few years. On day 2 of my visit, I decided to join some students in the cafeteria, coming back to some other comments about cafeterias. And when I walked into the room, the first thing I noticed was full tables of kids having face-to-face conversations, and not a single phone was in sight. It gave me goosebumps. It actually does again right now, just saying that. It was incredible to see and proud. I was proud to see what can happen. I sat down at a table of sophomores and freshmen, and we talked about everything in their school that they loved and some things that they didn't love so much. I asked them about cell phones, and their response was actually kind of strange, like I was the weird one. Because they really said cell phones are not an issue. They don't think about them. They don't really care about them. One student even said when they go home at night, they forget to even have a phone until after dinner time. It's become just a normal for them. So my point in commenting today is that although the discussion and idea may seem extreme to some, and it certainly may have its hiccups if we do implement anything, it does work. It will work in the long run. Thank you.
Sorry to finish the thought. Yep, thank you. Next up, we have Garrett Randolph in the room.
How you doing? Full disclosure, our daughter Oriana was when cell phones were first in the schools, she came home and complained that a teacher had asked how many of them have cell phones, and she said, and I was the only one that didn't have a cell phone. So that's full disclosure from us. But I studied education in college. I've been in education a lot of my life, and what this reminds me of is Outward Bound. Working at Hurricane Outward Bound, where all the students would come, adults or whomever, and we would make them unpack all their stuff that they wanted to bring on the trip. And we'd go over and say, nope, 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 nope. Leave it or don't come. And they would leave all their technology, and they would have an amazing experience in the outdoors and together. The other thing that I remember is taking trips, whether to rock climb or kayak or whatever, and the young people would always want me to turn the radio up, play the radio. And if I turned it down, I would sneak it down. Then they would visit and hang out and have these wonderful experiences, which would support the whole trip. But if the radio was up, they'd fall asleep, look out the window. So my main point is I trust the educators in this room. You do a great job. You do not need to be burnt out unnecessarily. And I trust whatever you think you need to do to teach our kids. And I just, I guess that's my main message is that I don't think you deserve any more stress than you have. You guys have the background, you have the education, you're doing this. I've seen so much passion from the teachers in the school. And we need to support that passion. And if a parent can't be in touch with their kid for 6 hours, they may need to think about themselves, in my opinion.
Thank you. Next up on Zoom, Laura Mitchell.
Hi, I just want to voice my support for a ban or whatever on the cell phones. I guess I don't totally understand the philosophy of the bag with the magnets when you can just unmagnetize it, but if that's the recommendation, then go for it. Anything is better, I think, than having the kids have access, quite honestly. I think as parents, we should be sending our kids off to be able to learn in their best capacity, and that's apparently not happening. And so support. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have Melody Diaz. Sorry.
Hi, I'm here as well. I'm parent of a OHS student and as a substitute teacher in the schools. And first of all, I want to thank the board for allowing public comment on this topic. I think it's really wonderful that you're eliciting opinions and ideas. I want to thank you for the research and the presentation that you did, and for presenting some different things that I had questions about, such as emergency preparedness. That was my primary. I had a second grader on September 11th of 2001. I don't know how many of you had children in school at that time. Some of you may have been children in school in 2001. It was a horrifying, scary experience. And addressing emergency preparedness in the most critical and detailed manner possible, I think is very important. I support the faculty of the school, and I know that it's very hard. I know that the students do abuse the policies. There are those that are very good about it. There are those that are wonderful and follow the rules, and it almost feels as though they're being penalized because of the few. Which is why I think a collaborative idea and an educational piece, which I know you've tried to do to educate them, but to do a collaborative effort and say, this is what we're doing because, and how do you feel? And kind of eliciting more collaboration with the students. Because there are exceptions, and I appreciate your addressing the idea of exceptions as well, because there are those students who will have exceptions and will need and will not abuse that exception. So thank you again, and I am glad that you're going to kind of work on this and see what we can do for the best of everyone.
Thank you. Next up, Beth Hoffnagel from Zoom.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth, and I'm here as a parent of an OHS student, as well as a teacher educator and educational researcher. I'm also a former K-12 teacher. And largely, I'm here to support the profession of teachers. And I think it's absolutely wonderful how many teachers have been already speaking tonight. They're ringing the alarm bells, and I think it behooves us to listen to the experts who are the teachers and the building administrators. And that's really my point. So I do fully support a ban. And there's certainly tons of research already been spoken to about the effects of too much screen time, because we certainly know then screen time continues at home after school. And I really appreciate the presentation tonight and all of the work that's gone into it. And it's so clear to me, and has been since I've been in this district for almost 10 years, how thoughtful our teachers and building administrators are in problem solving as well as addressing. And I have no doubt that there are mechanisms that will be in place to continue to refine and tweak should a ban go into effect, and address issues that come to the fore. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, Loki Dias.
Hi, I'm Loki. I'm here as an OHS student. Sorry.
Take your time.
Brain.
You're doing great, PA.
Brain.
Yeah, take your time.
Do you want to come back? You can come back. We'll
You
call
can
you
come back,
again.
yep.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Katie Quirk on Zoom.
Hi, my name is Katie Quirk. I'm a teacher at the middle and high school. And I'm actually going to read Dan Strain's message or an excerpt from it. Dan is also a teacher at the high school, as well as a parent of a number of students in the Orono School District. Dan is out coaching kids sports tonight, and he asked one of us to read his message. I happen to share all of his views expressed here. I'm just going to read an excerpt. He says, smartphones interrupt focus, fragment attention, and reduce meaningful engagement with both peers and teachers. Every minute spent checking notifications, texting, or scrolling is yet another moment lost from face-to-face interactions with both peers and teachers. It's another minute lost to learning how to read social cues, resolve conflicts, listen actively, and communicate clearly. It is yet one more forgotten minute where there was potential for engaging in thoughtful, real conversation and group work. Our students need to develop empathy, critical thinking, collaboration, and problem solving, skills that are fundamental not just for academic success, but for developing into more socially aware, confident, and capable human beings. So I want to thank everyone who's expressed their views tonight on behalf, and this message came from Dan Strain. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, look, if you feel inspired, just jump up. Otherwise, before, you don't have to wait till I call you again, just jump up and claim the podium. But if you don't, that's also fine. We appreciate your showing up and being here to speak on the issue. Next up in the room, we have Amy Dias.
You first.
You can bring somebody up to the podium with you if you want to.
Okay, thank you all. I am Amy. I am a parent of an incoming OMS and a former educator working with at-risk first-generation kids through an Upward Bound program through the University of Maine. I'm going to talk really fast because I have a lot of points, and I apologize for that. But I think a ban is a horrible idea. I think it's not a great idea because we are hindering these kids in learning life skills. I was working with first-generation low-income children, and we taught them real life skills. In college, they're not going to put a phone in a pouch. They're not going to take your phone and put them in your locker. In college, you're going to have to deal with those real life situations. And high school should be a time where they're learning a lot, but they're learning life skills. Half of the time, these kids are running from sports to activities to drama to different clubs, and having their phone in their pocket may be an issue in the classroom, but that should then come on the teacher. And I know as educators, that's hard. We're already asked to do so much as educators, and we have parents breathing down our necks, and we have so many different things that we have to do. But at some point, we need to be the adult and let the children be children and have a different system in place. And I know I'm in the minority on this, so if yonder pouches are the way that we're going to go, I think that there needs to be a magnet in every single classroom, and I would personally write a grant to get that funding, because not having access to their phone in certain situations, even with emergency protocols in place, is not going to happen. Nowadays, we're getting parents that are dropping their kids at school and not coming to pick them up because they have 2 seconds to text their kid because ICE took them away. And not having access to that phone may be that their kid is left here and not knowing where their parent is. We're in a very safe community, I feel, and I feel that emergency situations can happen, but we have a great community. We have great response. The police department's right down the road. But our kids in this generation, for sure, have gone through COVID. They have these issues, but it's not the standard. I think we really need to kind of put it back on the adults.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Bergen on Zoom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bergen Soderberg, and I'm a junior at Orono High School. Today, I'm here to talk about the negative effects that cell phones have on students in our school. As a student at Orono High, I have seen and experienced the profound impacts that cell phones have had in our generation. I've sat in a classroom at a table in school where all the students, including me, were staring at our phones instead of interacting socially, not just once, but almost every day. To this day, the recreational use of cell phones is an identified yet ignored epidemic. Millions of Americans choose to look at a screen rather than to talk to a friend or spend time with their family. We are so addicted that we see the validated research of the negative impacts that cell phones have and still permit ourselves and our kids cell phone use at any time, anywhere. I've personally felt the impacts of this with two parents who have given me some degree of technological freedom. However, this freedom hasn't always been beneficial to me. I can remember nights when I had work to do, but instead would choose to scroll away on my phone, or study halls during the school day where I could be engaging with schoolwork, yet instead I was watching an entertaining video on my phone. I believe that the main reason we use cell phones is because we feel that we aren't able to handle the world around us. We use them as an outlet to escape our troubles and anger, and to relax our brains by looking at a virtual pool of nothingness. As we look at nothingness, time ticks whether we want it to or not. Yet we don't see cell phones as nothingness because we feel such a strong connection to our devices, because we see them as such a useful tool. While I do believe that communication with cell phones is important, it doesn't need to be done during the school day. School is such an important time to stay away from phones because it is where students begin to learn and develop their skills and interests, and any inhibitor of that would be detrimental for student learning. Overall, to do a favor for all students learning, the school board has the potential to make big changes to enforce a stricter cell phone policy. Marianne will expand on some possible solutions for the school.
Great, thank you.
I think Loki's ready.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Loki. I am a 10th grader at OHS, and I think that the phone policy has kind of made us draw more attention to the phones and like less attention on learning, because it's more of a, yes, phones can be a distraction, but the distraction with it is if the phone's in the box or not. I have seen that in one of my classes the most, and it has been so annoying because I've just wanted to just get to learning, and the students always like making fun of the others for not putting their phone in the box. Another thing is yes, taking away the phones will take away the cyberbullying, but take away the cyber part of it, and there's still bullying. I've been a part of that. Okay. I have been a part of this. I have not been the one bullying, I've been the one being bullied. I've noted many times first semester and this semester that I have been bullied in person. You take away the phone part and it's more face to face, so it's more deep. And it can also get physical, which I have seen more specifically last year. And there has been more times where I felt more hurt. And just, I feel as though that implementing a full-on ban would be absolutely worse for anything. And I think paying too much attention on phones is worse than paying more attention on the bullying part. Paying more attention to phones means the kids will, well, it's also just teenager brain that we sometimes, most of the time, go towards things that we are not supposed to do. It's just the rebellious phase of life that a lot of people have gone through. And I'm aware of this because I've seen it, I've been it, I've known my family has been it. I know my family's going to be it, so yeah, just a little bit, eh, like the phone policy. I think the phone policy now is pretty good. It's just a little much. Thank you.
Super, thank you. I appreciate all the students who get up and speak. That takes a lot of courage to speak as a student, and I especially appreciate the courage to speak from a place of vulnerability. Next up, we have Sydney. She had to leave the room. I know she's still here.
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. On Zoom, we have Marianne Pitt.
Hello, everyone. My name's Marianne Pitt, and I'm a junior at Orono High School. I've seen with my own eyes the way students, including myself, have prioritized the mini world that our devices provide to us rather than the real world we're experiencing outside of them. So I wanted to talk about alternative ways to educate students about their phone usage and provide other options for them to learn on their own, to spend time in a more productive manner, and find other things that they enjoy off screens. One policy idea that Bergen had mentioned to me was the idea that we could meet in our advisories in the morning to leave our phones and only come get them at the end of the day. Along with this, it's time to inspire and educate kids to want to spend time off their phones and allow them to find what they enjoy off screens rather than only taking away their phones. This is a significant consideration because as our minds are still developing, we will naturally want what we can't have and only think all day about what was taken away from us, leading to lower focus levels and less active minds. Although I understand the goal of taking away phones is to increase productivity and limit distractions, this will have the opposite effect due to how society has evolved, and that goal is simply too far gone. It is with this in mind that I believe we need to expand on Miss Terrell's after school offline club because I know of numerous students, including myself, who would love to join but can't due to sports and other obligations. So we should incorporate it during school hours by opening a part of the library as a strict tech-free zone that offers alternative activities for kids to do, such as crocheting, reading, playing cards, etc., as well as a spot for kids to come in and do work as long as it is on paper or to study. Along with this idea, it'd be very beneficial across all fronts to incorporate a few days a month where the whole school goes completely tech-free, no phones, laptops, touchscreen boards, or headphones. This means all assignments would be on paper and any tools or sources would be non-electronic. Over time, students will naturally begin to pay more attention in class and participate. Kids willingly giving up their devices and feeling inspired to use that time in a productive manner will prove to be more effective in the long term of eliminating phone addiction. Thank you.
Thank you. See, Becky Dennis.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Becky. I'm a parent of an OHS student. I have been a nurse for 13 years. I've been a paramedic for 18 years, and I've been college faculty for 5 years. And I'm here to express the not so frequently heard voice of dissent. I am not dissenting on the science. I actually work with the science every day. We know that there is anxiety tied to cell phone usage. We know there is distraction tied to cell phone usage. And we know that cell phone usage does mimic at a neural level addiction. I'm not here to argue that. That is fact. What I am here to wonder is whether it's too easy to blame cell phones for the anxiety and the disconnection that students are feeling. That seems a little too simple in the complicated world that we're living in. I would instead challenge that I'm hearing the desire, and I'm with you on going back to the way things used to be and educating on how things used to be. This is not the world that it used to be. This is a very different world than those times that we all seem to be longing for. Again, myself included. As faculty, it is my job to prepare students for the world that they live in, to be smart, responsible consumers of the technology and the resources available to them to improve their future and work in the world that they live. Cell phones, computers, AI, this is the world
that we live in. And to deny students the opportunity to be responsible consumers of that is doing them a bigger injustice than letting them have their technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That completes the list. Is there anybody who thinks they were on the list that I missed? Is there anybody who was not on the list who would like to speak? Okay, thank you. That was a lot of very thoughtful, very civil, very polite conversation. I love showing people that it's possible to have civil conversation on an intense issue with disagreeing points of view. And I appreciate that happened tonight. Board, we'll go ahead and have a bit of discussion tonight. And then as I've indicated, we'll take our vote. Obviously, anybody's welcome to get up and leave at any time you want, but we always love it when people stick around too. First, I just wanted to respect the fact that Chief Merrill was here. I'm assuming you're choosing not to say anything, but you obviously have the floor if you would like to say anything.
I would just, so I'm Dan Merrill, I'm the police chief of Orono. I would just say that I think that everything that the administration's already brought forward spoke to all my points perfectly. I think you brought up the highlights that I mentioned in my memo and that I cited in that resource. And just echo that we're here to support the school and whatever it is their decision is moving forward. Anecdotally, a lot of the things that were brought up here are experiences that our school resource officer has through the cyberbullying and through these Snapchat platforms, spreading rumors and, you know, pictures and images throughout the school that we've had to deal with. And then we have to take kids out of class to deal with these issues. So I think that it's a very dynamic topic that is in front of us. And, you know, we're just here to support the administration and the board and whatever it is their decision is. But I think that there's been some good thought put into it and a lot of good feedback brought forward today. And, you know, the thing that really resonates to me was when Meredith was talking about the hoax incident that we had 7 or 8 years ago. I was the second person in the building as a police officer. And it was, you know, a lot of training I've been to and conferences that emergency preparedness is important. The school is doing a lot for that. And when something bad ever happens, if something ever bad happens, university, wherever it happens, it's just chaos. And the more chaos you can bring through misinformation or things that can get spread through, you know, unvetted sources, just can make these situations a little harder and more difficult when we're trying to do our job. It can be hard enough as it is. It was hard that day. It took a long time to unpack as to what really happened. And so I think that, you know, it's a tough decision for the board. So from our perspective.
Thank you very much. Okay, for the board, Meredith and I had this conversation. Cell phone policy has traditionally existed in student handbooks, which has not come to the board. But I think in the end, we felt like this is a decision being taken at the state legislature and the school board level. And I think we felt it was important that the administration went forward to implement this policy, which is probably going to have some controversy, that they knew they had the support of the board behind it. So we are bringing it to the board for a decision this time. It's not necessarily required by law or anything, but that was the consensus I think Meredith and I came to. And like I said, as Meredith kind of laid out, we're not going to try and adopt this through a policy for time reasons. I think we'd like to be thoughtful about the policy. We'll probably adopt this, you know, adopt or vote against it. We'll probably vote this through what I would just call an extended motion, maybe a motion with a couple of specific sub clauses that might capture concerns of the board as directions that we pass on to the administration over the summer. And then we have August and September in policy committee to implement something that's consistent with the district. So that's the process from a board point of view. Floor is open. You can feel free to tell us how you're going to vote tonight. You can feel free to just reflect and say how you're going to vote until 2 weeks from now. It's really board prerogative at this point. Anybody want to start? Yes, yeah, that includes you. Anybody want to go?
Well, I'll jump in. So there seems to be overwhelming support for the ban. So I lean heavily towards supporting it. But I do want to add some caveats to that. listening to Loki, for example, I'm reminded of my own childhood. I was extensively bullied, both physically and emotionally through school. And that was 30 years ago, well before Google, Snapchat, Facebook, cell phones. It was a long time ago. And to see that sort of thing still persisting means that if this ban accomplishes some of the goals, some of the concerns of educators, that's great. But it means that something still needs work. And I'm concerned about it's even if Loki were the only student at OHS having that experience, it's one student too many. I can tell you that my own experiences with non-cyberbullying have followed me through my life, have left me with rage I've worked through therapy, with difficulties in connections and trust. Day in, day out, kind of taunting in the hallways, well before technology is just destructive. And this is not pointing my fingers at anyone, but like this is a community that's missing something. So I guess the two things I'd like to throw out there, again, overwhelmingly the educators, support the ban, and I understand their concerns and I support them. So what goes with this, with regards to, say, cyberbullying and ordinary face-to-face bullying, and also, what sort of content or curriculum plans will we have to address the fact that these devices do exist at 2:45 or 2:15? How are they understanding of the content on these devices? It will be easier to teach, I'm sure, without them in the classroom. But when they go home and they're looking at information generated by AI or generated by influencers who have every reason to misinform for engagement and clicks, how are they ready to engage with that information? And what I'd like to believe that a classic humanities education will be enough, I don't think it is. So, and I know that as an older person myself, I turn 47 soon, that I'm less and less connected to this device, even though I have it right here. It's on my desk, it's not in the bag. So with support, I just want to make sure we don't just do the ban and forget about the fact that these do follow the kids. And again, it's extremely disheartening to see that young person have those experiences. That's my piece.
Thank you. You look at me because you want to go, Noah? Or are you?
No, I can talk.
Okay.
But actually, I've written notes like you did. I support the ban. I think that, I feel like as a society, we're just like going down the drain overall. And I sort of feel like I sort of see this as like, we're clawing our way back up a little bit by holding on to this sort of moment of like not having cell phones and having some face-to-face, having this like outward bound experience. But like, as technology keeps evolving faster and faster, like, the cell phone ban today is going to be in our computers, in our glasses, or somewhere else tomorrow. And I think we're going to, like with AI, have to really like, this is not going to be a one and done kind of thing. And so being aware of that and like is one of the things I think. I don't know. Future doesn't look right to me right now, but I think this is a great move in holding on to some of our innocence. I think also like, I do have specific questions about like, the pouch itself and like how that works coming into the day, and like the teachers, are they banned? Do they have a pouch too, or they have their phones? And like some of the details I think need to get worked out a little bit. I'm not aware of them. And I feel like I had some other things to say too, but I think overall, I'll think of those things later.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a big issue. It's part of why we're having two conversations as a board.
Can I just answer a couple of things? Yes. We have in our FAQ doc that's a draft that Meredith we pulled up at the end of the presentation. There is addressing that last question you have about school staff.
Yeah.
And this is how we answered that question. Given that we are working towards a more screen-free environment to improve mental health, staff will be asked to be mindful of their own cell phone use, but will not be required to use a yonder pouch. Staff's cell phone should not be actively used during teaching and working periods unless needed for a job-related reason. During prep time or break, staff may use their cell phone for personal reasons. Principal will follow up with staff as needed. And one of the examples is sometimes if staff take students outside, cell phones are one of the key communications that we can, have to reach that staff member in the event. We need to reach them or they need to reach us. So we've talked some about that. But it is something that, as Eric mentioned, that we all struggle with.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think I feel like it supports the staff moving this direction. And I guess, given that there are some questions about like, dissent from various factors, I guess I'd also see this as, we do this and we see what happens over the next couple of years and make sort of track it and see, is this having the effect that we're predicted here, and do we be sure that we always are, we'll be intentional about that, and if for some reason our whole school community falls apart, we can phones back in or whatever. So
Couple of thoughts I have. I have more than a decade of, public comment over intense issues, and two things struck me tonight. One was how many teachers showed up. This is by far the most teacher presence on an issue. So first off, I appreciate that. But that says some things to me as well about how strongly the feelings teachers are about this. It's also the biggest dichotomy between the people who spoke and the surveys we've run. And I think I'm still reflecting on what that means, but I think that is an interesting thing to reflect on too. And I do think in a country where civic engagement is falling down to a thumbs up on a Twitter post or an X post or whatever it is, I do think we should be thinking about civic engagement as well. As several people noted, we have a the laptops, and we have that 6 through 12, which not every district has. The state doesn't pay for all that. That's a top up from the district. And I know people like that and people don't like that in and of itself, but to me that cuts two ways. On the one hand, it does answer some of the questions about if a parent has to communicate or somebody has to find out about hey, your job, we want you to show up at your job tonight. Are you available to take a shift tonight? Or, I think it's important to recognize students' work. Students also, high school students are part of childcare coordination with their parents, right? As they take care of younger siblings. But there is an email option that remains, right? On the flip side, as we heard, I think Marianne in particular put it pretty well. I think if we're going to be serious about cell phones, I think we have to be serious about thoughtful engagement with multi-laptops too. And that's not a new thing. This is a conversation that's been happening in this district for a long time. And we have policies in place. We have many teacher conversations and professional development. And we do have, thanks to the work of a lot of people, the technology committee and Susan in particular recently implemented technology curriculum, which includes quite a bit of conversation about technology harm as well as technology benefits. So we're not going to solve the whole multi-issue on top of the cell phone issue tonight, but for me, it cuts two ways, and I hope that continues to be an ongoing conversation. I broadly am supportive of the direction of the recommendation. To me, it's very important. This is the policy long speaking. Implementation matters as much as intention. And I think we unfortunately are about to hit summer. And so it's really important that the thinking and the communication continues through the summer. In terms of, so when we have that first day in September, we actually have our act together in terms of knowing exactly how this is going to work. Scenario for plan B, the backup plan for plan C, right? We have to have that together, and we have to communicate it to the broader community, not just the 30 or so people who showed up tonight, what our thoughts and thought process and intentions are around emergency response and some of those kinds of things. So I think implementation is an important piece of what goes forward. And I think that's part of what needs to get reflected in this motion plus that the board might discuss next time. I guess I'll just end on the defining moment for me in this conversation, which happened a couple months ago. It was chance conversation with Meredith Diamond. I think it was before or after curriculum committee or some other meeting we were supposed to go to, talking, just saying, think about what this cell phones today look like in the high school, not during the class time. I'm an educator. I'm a university professor. I care about the educational content piece of this a lot, and I don't have a doubt that cell phones are interrupted to that. I see it in my own classroom. I teach classes of 50 to 100 college students, so my attitude is kind of, you snooze, you lose, right? It's not my job in that case to, or at least I choose not to make it my job to enforce cell phones in those contexts, but I see myself that it affects educational contexts. But I think I have the deepest concern about cell phones in the school is the social emotional piece. And going back to my conversation with Meredith, just prompting me to think, when I think about my high school experience, I remember occasionally things I learned. I certainly remember teachers, but they mostly influenced me personally, right? Socially, emotionally is why I remember them. I don't remember the school content I learned. On some level, I must have because I passed and I got into college. But the thing I remember the most is interactions with my peers. And I don't know why, but I flashed to sophomore chemistry. I think it's because Mr. Guthrie, the chemistry teacher, always took 10 minutes after the bell rang to prep his class before he started actually lecturing, which was a unique choice looking back on it as an educator. But there were a lot of conversations I had in that chemistry class with students sitting next to me, and they were not the students I hung out with after school or on the sports teams or something like that. This was slice of life kind of, it was a required class, slice of life conversations with students. We had assigned seating sitting around me. And I thought about what that looks like with a cell phone, and it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like I happen to have a 16, my kids are out of school. Even between my 24-year-old and my 20-year-old, I notice a difference in cell phone addiction. And I now happen to have a 16-year-old who's passing through my household for a bit. And from the 20-year-old to 16-year-old, I notice a difference in the addiction. And I know what my chemistry class would look like today. It would be 10 minutes of this, and it would be 0 minutes of conversation. So that was the most impactful moment for me in the whole thought process. I didn't come into this a year ago with a particular predetermination. I'm very sympathetic to students have to learn how to learn. Students have to learn how to self-regulate. That's a lot of what we talk about in the school district. I did not come in with a strong preconception, but that was my crystallizing moment when I talk about the social context in particular. Mark or Jake, anything you want to ask or add?
I'll say that overall, I'm supportive of a bell-to-bell cell phone ban, but I did have a couple questions. What percentage roughly of districts statewide do you say have this ban? My impression is it's fairly new, right?
Fairly new.
Okay.
Fairly new.
I know someone who spoke mentioned, I think Dave Hamel mentioned the district up north, so that's one. It sounds like we talked to a district down south, that's two.
Right, I think you have fewer districts doing it, and you have pockets where schools are doing it in places. But I know that Portland is voting, I think tonight, and there was another district.
So SAD 75, which is Topsom, they're considering yonder patches for next year, but haven't signed on yet. RSU 56 is considering them for next year, haven't signed on yet. Booth Bay is considering them for next year, haven't signed on yet. Districts that do have them, interestingly, North Haven and Vinyl Haven, both of the unbridged islands, have been using yonder pouches. Mount Blue has also been using yonder pouches. RSU1, obviously. But something that struck me about Dave's comment was that, Presque Isle hasn't been on our radar. It's not one of the schools that is in the mix in terms of, it's almost like we're hearing rumors about like who's doing what. But Dave said, and Emily Francis was on that visit as well, that this has been in process for them since cell phones became a thing in the building. And so it's institutionalized in a way that gets us, they don't have yonder pouches, but they're at the reality for which we are aiming, right? Where, as Brian said, there's an article that I shared with him not that long ago called Phones? No, we had each other. And this phenomenon of teenagers now watching home videos of what the high schools look like in the 90s, with this fondness for a time that they never actually knew themselves, because they're struck by the fact that people are talking to each other, people are hanging out, people are lingering. There is a sense of just being in a mix where, things happen, and in time we also figure out who we are. But so I kind of wonder, after talking to Dave, I wonder, how many other schools are in that category? This has been their reality. They aren't having to talk about it because RSU1 has realized literally within a semester, once you do this, you just don't talk about phones anymore.
One of the other things, there are schools around us who are trying to do what we've been doing the last few years. And most of them are in the same place we are. There's just not taking the next step yet. Interestingly, there's a district around us that their school has 0 cell phone service. And so they kind of have this natural, cell phone ban in their school because you cannot use.
They
cell
don't let them
phones.
connect to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and there is 0 service. And if you've ever been in that school, you know which one I'm talking about. So
I feel like like some of the search committees, we've been like several of the teachers that have come up from those other schools, the individual schools, and have been like so over the moon about the change. I don't know the individual schools.
I have yet to hear somebody implement this, said, oh, that was a mistake, but I want to make sure you get to finish, Jake. Towards your question also, I think Meredith mentioned LD 1234, which my understanding, that started as a statewide cell phone ban, kind of like New York. But where it's heading right now is a statewide requirement that every school board adopt a cell phone policy. So, yeah, we're ahead of the curve, but maybe not way ahead of the curve. Anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay, all right.
I mean, most of my points have already been raised. I'll just maybe add a little bit on some of them. I do think it's important for parents to be able to reach their kids during the day, particularly for high school kids who they rely on to watch younger siblings. I appreciate the fact that they'll have emails still available on their laptops. As someone who teaches college students, they almost never check their email, so we'll have to work on getting our high school students to actually check their email during the day, so that those messages get through. I also know that it'll be an option to call the office to relay those messages, which was common when I was a kid in school. I'm guessing a lot of parents today who are younger than me didn't have that experience, so we might have to train some parents too on how to reach out to kids. The employer angle is also real. I actually talked to some students before coming here tonight, and I asked them what they thought about it. And for the most part, they recognized that the cell phones were a problem in the classroom. But a number of them did mention how important it was for their employers to be able to reach them, and text was almost always how it happened. So we're gonna need to make sure that because some of these kids need to work, right, for a variety of reasons. So we're gonna have to make sure that parents and in some cases employers can reach their kids. So that's one thing we need to take care of. I think Kevin raises a good point as well, that I worry a little bit about if we ban phones bell to bell, are we just kicking that problem later in the day, right? Or are we just going to exacerbate issues with phones outside of school? Maybe, and I don't know the answer to that. I want to also point out something that Brian raised, but really Marianne raised it in her comments, is that removing the phones doesn't remove tech from schools, right? The laptops are omnipresent in schools. And I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of teachers at the high school would be hard pressed to teach without them. And that's an issue, I think. I almost never use technology when I teach, to the point where my students sometimes think I'm a Luddite, that I just don't have in the classroom. And getting rid of the phones, yeah, I should say, I haven't said this, I'm generally, I think we need to get phones out of the hands of kids. So I'm supportive of the policy overall. I worry that we see the getting rid of the phones as a cure-all when it won't necessarily be a cure-all. There's still going to be a lot of tech in front of kids, and I don't see that going away. So I think we have to think about, well, what's going to happen, if this really is an addiction, right? Anybody who knows anything about addiction is, you take one thing away, addicts are going to look for something else to fill that in. And is that other thing going to be the laptop that's going to be in front of them? So I think we need to think about that. And I guess the last question I have is probably one for Chief Merrill, and I don't know the answer to this, but I have no familiarity with these pouches, but let's say you put your phone in the pouch and it's in your bag, but you forgot to silence it or turn it off. If you have like a school safety situation and that phone goes off and it's locked up in this pouch and there's no magnet there, is that a problem?
Definitely a problem, or could be a problem, but not any worse than if they've got them in their pocket. And to some degree, I don't know enough about these bags, Meredith, maybe you can answer the question. I mean, I know that they have bags, we use them. If I seize your phone, I have bags, they're called Faraday bags.
Right, yeah, those are familiar with
that.
Right.
But won't even send or receive messages.
Right.
So I don't know if these bags have that technology.
I'm
But I
guessing
know
they
that
don't
doesn't
for $30 a pop.
I don't think they block signals. I think
No.
it's just a holder.
Faraday bags are a lot more expensive.
They are.
Yeah.
I try and use them selectively, but so I would, to answer your question directly, I don't know that it's going to exacerbate a problem that may not already exist if the policy wasn't to go in place, right? If you've got it in your pocket, you may not have it silent, it's gonna go off, it's gonna draw attention to you. If you've got it in the bag and it goes off, the net result is the same.
It'll be on longer though, right? If there's no magnet to.
Yeah, it could be.
Do you think it would make sense to, before they put them in the bag, to make them power it off or at least silence them?
I think it might be, I think that would be a good policy recommendation for sure, to ensure that you're not, you're definitely minimizing that risk should something bad happen. Yeah, I don't think that would be a bad policy recommendation, so.
Thank you.
Or power them off altogether. I mean, again, what's the end goal? Either power them off, make the policy power them off altogether, or put them on silent before you put them in the bag.
Yeah.
For your points exactly. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I mean,
Isn't that
obviously
RSU
this,
one? Sorry. Isn't that RSU one's policy?
Turn it off first.
The
Yeah.
power off, I think it's the RSU one's policy.
the safety issue is the biggest concern, but I don't think we want, ringers going off in class with no access either. So I think that's gotta be part of the thought process, is that silencing has to be enforced just as much as putting it in the bag.
I don't know, Mary, did you talk about, would the teachers have them in their room?
It's yet to be determined how many magnets we would have. It's a little, cause I think it would maybe, cause a new problem.
Yeah.
For teachers to all have the ability to unmagnet the phones of now Mr. Buell being asked,
Come on, Lucio.
50 times to unlock my phone in class. So I think we need to think about that.
I guess the only other thing I'd add is I do think it's important to have a couple of these magnets outside, like you said, that Morse is doing, because inevitably people are gonna leave and forget and.
I was thinking the bus drivers, you're hurrying out to get on the bus. It makes sense maybe for the bus drivers also.
Can I, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that one of the recommendations, or I guess one of the strategies that schools use that was shared by the vendor was that they'll have a magnet that teachers can check out. So if they're like going on a field ecology walkabout, they want to take some photos, the teacher can take the magnet to unlock student phones. Their recommendation was to not have magnets in classrooms for the reason, that Meredith said, not putting the teacher in the position of having to be the gatekeeper, but then also having them available for when they would be useful to instruction.
Mark brought up a valid point about employers trying to reach students, but to that end, isn't there, and I'm not a super tech guy, but I know you can text an email address and the text message will go to that email address, which really doesn't help because the employer would have to text the email address. But aren't there free apps like text to email? So any text that comes to your phone goes to your email automatically. So a student could receive something from a.
If you install Google Chat as an app on your phone and you wanted to message Drew, you could open Google Chat, message Drew, it would come through on his Google Chat on his browser. And then when he messaged it back, it would come through to you like a text. So that's one way to do it. I'm sure that there are, other ways to do it as well. Something I found interesting was that in our conversation with the vendor, they talked about professional places where these are used because of the obstacle of phones to the work that is being done in those spaces. One example was call centers. I guess call centers will use Yammer pouches to keep people off their phones while they're supposed to be working. Warehouses where there's a danger to distraction and people can get hurt if they're on their phones. And so the idea of it being strictly a school issue was something that was dispelled to, in the conversation with the vendor, right? Like, this is not just a kid problem in schools. This is something that is being dealt with in multiple places for multiple reasons.
Do you have something to add, Sophia? I don't want to put you on the spot, but make space for you.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm largely in support for the bell-to-bell ban. I mean, I also struggle sometimes with like this assignment is very interesting, like you don't want to do it, but the only thing is I think that it's important to also teach the skills of like after the school day ends, just not to completely like just have the instinct to grab your phone, because I recently went to a leadership summit and it was overnight, and we had to leave our phones in our dorms, but my roommate, when she would come home every night, would just be scrolling for hours into the night. And I think over time perhaps this would be this instinct would just be gone, but I think that just we need to also be teaching skills of just not being addicted to technology even after the school day.
Thank you. No?
Couple other things I thought of, well, one thing in general, one thing that struck me about the presentation was like how, like, so like the states that are implementing this are very red states and then very blue states, so it's interesting how we sort of like the board is very united. So I wasn't actually expecting that kind of like cross political sort of agreement on this, which is interesting. And it speaks to like how I think this is in line with like their strategic plan, all the things we talked about. I agree with everything. One thing I would ask too, though, like so we go to high school, we say ASA is fine right now, and OMS, and I do wonder, like, is that how quickly that might change? Because I know like Juno's friends have Apple Watches and they're texting their mom all day, and I know these things happen, and like, so I guess they just like want to keep an eye too, like again, like. Yeah, being flexible, fluid, and open to like as this evolves super rapidly, like where this is going, and do we need to? Is how long is the OMS and the AIDS going to continue to function as it is? Just my thoughts.
Yeah, and technologies, as you already said, right? I wouldn't even thought to put smartwatches on because I would never want to have one, but clearly it's important for students, and glasses are coming soon. And I don't know what it is, but at some point everybody's gonna have implants, right? So that's where we're gonna have to put the Faraday cage around the whole school, but.
Well, the Yonder rep suggested the language of wearable tech, like cell phones and wearable technology.
Yep.
Kind of to your, the point of it's smartphones right now, but it could be glasses and who knows what.
That sounds right to me. Okay. We do have a long night ahead of us. I think we'll go ahead and move on. And I don't know if we said this, but students are always welcome to leave at 8 o'clock because we know you have early school days and homework and tests and everything
Finals
else.
this
So,
week, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And anybody who's welcome to leave at any point. We don't take offense.
You don't have to just be under 18 or 19.
Yeah, Kate wants us last, so we get more.
Or if you're a senior citizen and it's your head. Thank you.
Next up, we have co-curricular nominations. I would make a motion to approve the slate as presented. Is there a second?
I second.
It is a long slate for the fall, high school and middle school, so I think I'm not gonna read it. It's in the public record if anybody wants to access it. Any questions or comments from the board? Go ahead and vote. All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0. I would make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056A, appointment officials and personnel under the hiring recommendations agenda item. Is there a second?
We'll second.
Any discussion or questions on the executive session? All those in favor? Okay, we'll go into executive session. I'm sorry you're all still here. That was a long night.
Oh, yeah. You think it's okay.
Okay, Meredith, do you have a recommendation for the two OHS science teacher positions?
Yes, I am bringing forward Megan McCosker and Emily Roth for the two science positions at OHS.
I would make a motion to authorize the superintendent to enter into agreements for hire with Megan McCosker and Emily Roth. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. You have a nomination for OMS special ed teacher.
Yes, I nominate Brian White for the OMS special ed teacher position.
I would make a motion to authorize superintendent to enter into an agreement for hire with Brian White for the OMS special education teacher. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. And Meredith, do you have a recommendation for the MLL teacher?
Yes, I recommend Marley Collins for the MLL teacher position.
I would make a motion to authorize superintendent to execute an agreement for hire with Marley Collins for the MLL teacher. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Next up, looks like Susan finally gets to speak.
Do you can you share the PowerPoint? Meredith?
Yes.
Thanks. I'm gonna start some books on this end. There's a couple books down at this end.
Send them down.
Send them down. Just you could at least touch a little bit.
Felt like some morphine magic at first. What?
Morphine magic. Yeah, I learned a lot through this process. I'll say that. This has been, I'll let you go ahead to the next slide. Thanks. About a 2-year journey where the literacy leadership team was reconvened after a break from COVID plus some other changes. And not just the literacy team, but I really want to commend all the teachers at ASA. They really are passionate about their teaching and very knowledgeable when it comes to literacy and how kids learn, and brought a lot of expertise to the conversation. And they really invest a lot, I think, of their time and energy into this topic in particular, but also into our kids. It was great to see. We were looking for some evidence-based resources aligned with the science of reading. We wanted to make sure that we had equitable, high-quality resources that all kids could access, and wanted to be ready for next school year. All of our teachers use the workshop model, and in my board report, which has a lot more links and details than this kind of really brief presentation, you could read more about workshop model. There's a link there to an article from ASCD, but everybody uses the workshop model and felt that was really successful. Recognized the need for some more up-to-date resources. Another thing that was really important is we wanted the materials to still allow for professional autonomy and student-centered adjustments. That was really important to our teachers. I mean, our teachers were spending a lot of time trying to find materials and finding different things, but also recognizing that there were some gaps and redundancies. We didn't have a great scope and sequence. So those were some of the challenges we were working with. The science of reading, just to give you a 2-second overview of what we mean when we say that. One of the things that you often find when you look up about the science of reading is Scarborough's rope. And that really emphasizes these 2 strands. And each of those strands of those ropes have lots of mini strands within those. Word recognition, so things like decoding, phonological awareness, which is hearing sounds and recognizing sounds with your ears, not necessarily in print, moves to phonics, where you are starting to recognize those sounds and letter connections in print. In addition to that kind of word recognition, it's really important that kids have the language comprehension. So kids can't really read the words unless they have heard the words and heard it first in conversation and used the word then themselves, and then see it in print can usually then decode it. But that background comprehension, that language piece is really important. So those two pieces get braided together for what's often termed the science of reading. We also looked at some other research and things that helped guide us. John Hattie recognizes that comprehensive instructional programs show a 0.72 effect size, which is almost 2 years worth of gains. So that's important for us. Charlotte Danielson, who we use for our teacher evaluation system, really recognizes that high quality instructional materials are important for teachers. They help reduce workload. She really believes that teachers should be curriculum adapters, not curriculum developers. Thank you. So really giving high quality materials to teachers and then letting them use their expertise and the background knowledge and their knowledge of their kids. So that was important as well. And then I put this bullet in here again, materials must still allow for professional autonomy and student-centered adjustments, because that is so important to us here in RSU 26. Another piece is that we needed to make sure that we were using evidence-based resources, not just research-based. And that distinction comes through the main DOE literacy grant, and that also comes from the federal government. So things can be researched, but not necessarily show that that research is showing evidence that it works. Just because it's been researched doesn't mean it works. So it has to be evidence-based as well. We had about 12 teachers meeting about every 3 weeks since the fall of 2023. We had broad teacher participation, though, as I mentioned earlier. Many teachers piloted materials, whether they were on the literacy committee or not. And I think all of our teachers worked in their PLCs with Carrie around looking at different writing programs, writing needs, and really had some really great in-depth conversations there as well. We piloted 5 different reading programs this fall, and that was an amazing feat that the teachers did. I was really proud of them, but they really wanted to dig into those programs to learn more about it. So they did units with their kids. They also did school visits, and we used our textbook matrix and rubric, as well as our cultural responsiveness questionnaire and rubric for that. And Claude helped us with the cultural responsiveness piece. I think it gave us more in-depth analysis than if we had just tried to do it by ourselves, and probably a little less biased too. So we do have some areas where we know in some of the materials that we want to help supplement or make sure teachers have that professional development to be a bit more inclusive. But we were also impressed with particularly fish tank materials. So after this process, we are coming to you tonight with a recommendation for some materials for foundational skills, reading instruction, and writing instruction. So foundational skills being passed back and forth there are Heggerty's Bridge the Gap for phonological awareness, UFly for the foundation, UFly Foundations for phonics, and then Morphine Magic from 95% Company for morphology. And it was interesting to see Meredith Diamond's reaction to the morphology book. She's like, kids learn this in elementary school now? As a high school English teacher, she was pretty impressed. And I was impressed too when I was sitting in on a learning walk in the 2nd grade classroom, and the kids were recognizing, explaining that would, should, and could were words you had to know by heart, and they don't really follow the English rules because they're from the French language, Mrs. Smith. I'm like, okay. So that's what we have chosen and used for this school year. Actually, we've been using those materials. Those were helped paid for through the grant from the Department of Ed. For reading programs, K2 decided Fish Tank ELA was the best choice for them. And My View for grades 3 to 5. And so the sort of over there on Mark's table is the My View book that was being passed back and forth. That was grade 3. And it just gave you an example. There's 2 units there. Thanks, Mark. Observations was 1 unit, and then Journeys is another unit. My View does have these consumable books, but they are based on authentic text. So it's not contrived text made for like a basal like it was when I first started teaching. The fish tank books are the ones I put over here by the bicycle are trade books that are various lessons are used based on those trade books. That happens to be the books that go with the kindergarten unit on reduce, reuse, recycle. And you can see that there's Hannah's 100 Hajibs there, and the patchwork bike and one plastic bag are both stories from Africa, whereas Ada's violin is a story from Paraguay. So well-rounded, I would say, in the materials that Fish Tank selects. So to expose kids to lots of different cultures and ideas and perspectives. The curriculum committee met last week, I guess it was Thursday. And I have a few little notes here. They felt that the themes were really engaging and that these were excellent books. And for the foundational skills, one of the questions that they encourage us to ponder, and I think it's a great question, is how will we adapt, or what will we use with students that are older students, maybe struggling with some of those phonetic concepts still, and not have the material seem kind of babyish to the older students. So I do think that's something that we need to think about. And there are, Richard Glencross and I actually went to a workshop last fall or earlier this spring, or
It was in the fall.
it was in the fall, thanks, that really addressed that need. So that's something for us to keep in mind. The next slide talks about the writing programs that we've selected. What we did was looked at the research from the What Works Clearinghouse and the practices in teaching elementary students to be effective writers, and made sure that what we were choosing lined up with those practices. So you'll see, and you dig further into these materials, that their daily writing really works to encourage an engaged community of writers, that there's the writing process in place and writing for a variety of purposes. As well as spelling, sentence construction, and those types of things. So both primary lists for K3 and mystery writing for grades 4 and 5 really do provide teachers some really great, easy to use resources that emphasize those 4 practices that are evidence-based. One of the sort of questions and wonders from the curriculum committee, one, they did think that the materials were engaging and there was a nice scaffolding for teachers to use. But there some questions were coming up around the themes that are in the reading instructional materials are really high quality themes and match some of what we do in studies and science, but don't always match. And the same is true with the writing materials. So at some point, are we going to need to change some of what we teach in social studies and science? Do we want to think about that as we implement things? I think that's a great big picture question for us to be thinking about that. So I'm glad that was raised through the curriculum committee. All right. So funding. The cost estimate that we used in building the budget was with the most expensive set of materials, if we had chosen that for K to grade 5. And that the original plan had been to put about half of that in FY26 and the other half in FY27. But what we've landed on and decided comes to a grand total of approximately $71,070. And that includes resources for MLL teacher and our special ed teachers as well. So that's under the $75,000 that is budgeted for this coming fiscal year. That does include the MyView materials for 6 years. So it's a 6-year online license for all of our teachers to have access to, and 6 years of replacing the consumables. So those, we don't have to pay for that cost every year. The Fish Tank licenses are per student per kid. So we will buy the books this coming school year, or for this coming school year, but the licenses would be a reoccurring fee of $16 a student. So for ASA, that would be about $2,400–2,500, depending on how many kids are in that K2 span. And the mystery writing license comes in a bulk package with our mystery science writing, and it's about $1,000 to add that writing component to the mystery science license. So there are some reoccurring costs there. Almost $23,000 was spent on the phonics, phonemic awareness, and morpheme magic morphology pieces. That included some training for teachers and lots of decodable books, as well as the materials and the actual books themselves. And we do have carryover funding from Title I. We're in FY 25 now, right? So that for FY 24 from Title I, that has to be spent by September 30th. And we are intending to use almost $22,000 of that to purchase the intervention materials that come with these so that they can be used by our Title I eligible, for our Title I eligible students with our Title Is. We hope to purchase this summer and start in the fall. Go to the next one. There's two more. We're almost done. So, it took us 2 years to decide, and really do a thorough investigation of what we want. It's going to take a while for things to get implemented in a way that feels good to all of us. But the foundational skills in writing, all our faculty have had access to those and have started to use those already. Our instructional coach, Angie McLaughlin, has been absolutely wonderful and a treasure and really great helping people express how they feel and what they think about things and come to an agreement. And some of that training has already been provided. Fish Tank does a lot of train the leader and train the administrator piece so that the administrator, the leader, the coach in this case, can go in and help teachers in the classroom. They also have online modules that we're planning on doing through their PLC time. So that's not live, that's asynchronous types of work that they, or training that they provide. And my view, we have tentatively booked the very first early release day, which is September 3rd, I think it is, as a time for our teachers to get the initial training there. A lot of our teachers have already become familiar with these materials through the piloting process. They do have online access right now from what we've piloted, and Jason worked hard this week to get things set up with my view and the Savas company so that we will have online access this summer for teachers that want to dig into it earlier, and maybe we can do a little informal group. You want to come this summer and work together and have some lemonade and cookies and get them started then as well. Then there's some follow-up in December and PLC time as well. And then the last slide, it has been a collaborative process and an elaborate process. So we have reached consensus where this feels like these are the right materials for use at ASA. Wanting to balance the research-based and evidence-based materials along with that teacher autonomy and teacher professionalism. And it's, like I said, it's going to take a while for things to get implemented in a way that feels right to us, but we do believe this is the right path for us to go on. That's like the whirlwind tour of K-5 literacy. Questions or things that you'd like us to think about or keep in mind?
I mean, I'll just contextualize curriculum as a complicated concept because the board doesn't want to get down on the details of individual classrooms, but on the other hand, major curricular issues clearly are a community decision, a community funding decision, and come through the board, and also at this level, purchasing of textbooks is clearly at a board level. And so this is one of those bigger pieces that does come directly to the board for approval. Yeah, I'll just say that. And so that's why this is here tonight. Anybody have questions for Susan?
Question. It sounds like a lot of work. Thanks for putting that in.
It has been a lot of work. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of good work.
But how big a change is it from what is happening right now? Like we're teaching.
I think some of that change has happened over the last year and a half, and particularly around those foundational skills.
Okay.
And I think that change feels like it's becoming incorporated, The bigger changes, I think, will be in the primary instructional materials for reading, so the Fish Tank and the My View. We've looked at, I would say, 3 different types of resources and ended up picking 2 different types. So the first type we looked at, we ruled out right away, and it was really focused more on building that language comprehension piece and did not have enough of the foundational skills and the other components to it. So we ruled out wit and wisdom right away. Then the my view and another one we looked at called Wonders. Yeah. Are really very comprehensive and have lots of materials there that teachers can use. And I think as we learn what are the pieces that are most valuable, that'll take some adjusting, because I think there is so much there that teachers can pick from. And then the third type of materials that we look at are ones that are more open educational software almost. So the $16 for the fish tank is to get the professional level that does have assessments and things, but there are others like Fish Tank Once Bookworms that we looked at that are OER and available for folks, and then you purchase the trade books that go with them. So we ended up having lots of conversation and discussion, but really K2 reading is different than grades 3, 4, 5 reading. And so I'm not surprised that we ended up with two different things there. So I think those two pieces will be the bigger adjustment for teachers.
And another little thread, Noah, previously they had access to Lucy Hawkins reading programs and writing programs. And as teachers learned more about the science of reading and implementing those foundational pieces, and with the somewhat demise of the efficacy of Lucy's programming, teachers were seeking other materials to try to implement.
Yeah, it seems good to have resources that everyone can use, and everyone has to go looking for their own thing. I guess my other question too is sort of coming off of our last discussion a little bit, but it's not, I like the workbook there. I wanted to fill them out, and I smell the paper.
So the kids love that they can write in the book.
Well, this is my question. So what extent are we on paper and pencils here, and how much of this is digital? Because I know with my kids, like the Prodigy thing, we were always like, stay away from Prodigy, read your own books.
So our teachers, when we piloted, did not use the technology-based pieces with kids, and they just felt that wasn't a need to, and it was enough just to sort of use the book, especially with the 3, 4, 5 groups, I guess. And there are technology components available, and I think down the road we might say that yes, we do want to use some of those technology-based components. But one of the 5th grade books, like it's in the book like this, right? But it's the book Hatchet, which is by Gary Paulson, right? Isn't it this one? Yeah. And those are like real books too. So that real book, I think, at some point we might end up kind of shifting some of what we do purchase so that the kids have this version, but they also have the book version. That doesn't really answer your question though. I'm sorry, it was all about the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the question. Can we keep in physical spaces?
It's not primarily a tech-based program. I think answers the question. It's primarily a print-based program.
Yeah.
That appeals to the Ludo.
Are these books envisioned to go home with students, or are they gonna be only in the school?
I think that they will be mostly in the school, and then I was noticing like, as kids are completing work that's kind of getting ripped out sometimes and sent home in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, they're made as tear out pages, so I can imagine you might tear out a page and you can take it home and work on it and bring it back too.
I'm just thinking if my kids are representative, the ability to transfer something on.
Yeah.
It's not high at that age.
The pages, yeah.
Does this also provide like resources for teachers to photocopy, or is it all like each student?
It does have resources that teachers can photocopy. So yeah, both Fish Tank and My View. And the 2 writing pieces as well, and the foundationals.
I would just say, having kind of the curriculum committee meeting, the teachers brought a lot of enthusiasm. There were, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 teachers who've been involved in the process, and they all brought a lot of enthusiasm.
There's lots of things from the curriculum committee to look at that they had brought up, and it was really nice it was kind of like a gallery walk, and people just wandered and talked to each other, and there was some really great conversations, I think, in that format. It seemed to work well.
Personally, I'm most excited about the 3-5 rating. My kids went through a long time ago, so this is not a reflection on anybody who's there today, but it was very hit or miss, depending on whether that was a topic that the teacher had a strength in or didn't have a strength in. Providing we talk about scaffolding for kids, but providing the scaffolding for teachers to have at least some comment. I like the phrase curriculum adapter rather than curriculum creator. I don't know how I would create a curriculum for writing for a 3rd grader, so I like the idea, and I was very excited by the materials were very engaging, and the sample writing, the students' names are obviously crossed out, but the sample writing assignments were impressive, and it was across genres or types, right? There was persuasive writing and narrative writing. So that was what I spent time at the curriculum committee looking at, and I found it pretty exciting, so.
The teachers found those resources really exciting. I know that's a different slideshow, the comments about what they liked about it and what they didn't like, and there was really nothing that I didn't like.
I was thinking about why I was so jazzed about working magic after, because I really had this like visceral reaction to it. And thinking about it later, I feel like one of the biggest struggles in equity is creating for students without literacy-rich environments the benefits of the students who do have literacy-rich environments at home, and how students with those environments just develop an instinct for language, where they know how the things work and they know how to put the pieces together in a way that just lets them move so much faster. And that just felt like an equity tool, like teaching kids how to crack the code of language in a way that can help them bridge that gap from, not having a lot of print at home, not having a lot of reading at home, but still being able to keep up with peers who do. I just thought that was great.
Other questions? Are we ready to go ahead and vote?
All I'll say is yay phonics.
Yay, phonics.
Yes, I would make motion to adopt and authorize the purchase of the curriculum for starting in the fall as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I know that was a huge amount of work. Next up, we have a stipend position for OHS Civil Rights Team, 2-year stipend.
Yes, so this has gone through 2 years of trial and is now being recommended by the stipend committee to move to a full stipend at a 3-2 time for 3 responsibility 2. They have, a solid kind of base of participation in activities, and felt like it was a nice addition to the offerings at OHS.
Any questions? I would make a motion to authorize the creation of the stipended position for OHS Civil Rights Team. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Policies. We have one policy. It's a very simple change. It's a consequence of things we had already voted on. This unusually did not go through the policy committee meeting, but that's because we'd already discussed this topic and time is short. But the child fine policy, which is identifying and providing access to special services for children, is being expanded to recognize the 3 to 5 CSD services that we had discussed and that we are now filing in, that Lisa was talking about at the beginning. So I would make a motion to adopt the revisions to policy IHBAC as presented. It is literally just changing the 5-year-olds to 3-year-olds and requiring them to be of school age. Is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation or questions?
I have a question. I mean, the first paragraph, it's not dramatic. There's a no verb. I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter, but I don't understand it. Maybe we don't get talked about it, but in this policy, as far as I read it, I don't know what it's saying. That's all.
You don't what?
That first paragraph is a sentence with no, it's not, there's no verb. I don't know what it's saying. I guess maybe you could just.
Which sentence?
The regional school, the RSU Tracy seeks to ensure that all children in these categories, and then period, and all children, what do we seek to do with them children?
We're seeking them out.
Seek to ensure that all who are in need of special education support and assistance, and it's including a bunch of, categories.
Yeah. But what are we thinking to do with these children?
Yeah,
It's not, I take your point. It doesn't like get to the point. I think the next paragraph really explains that we're responsible for, child fine services.
Which I guess I don't know if that is, so that's part of my context, so I don't know what that sentence is trying to tell me.
Right, it means we're responsible for assessing and determining if there's a need for services beginning at age 3 for children. For the purposes of,
So that all that are in need receive those services.
right.
Yep.
So whereas before it was the responsibility of CDS to handle up to through age 4, and then we took over at age 5. So perhaps now we can just add 3 in, and then we can compare this to the model policy, which I think this is just the model policy. And decide if we want to clean it up later.
Yeah, that's what this is the thing that gives teeth to the mandate that every student gets special education, and it's mandated through the public schools. Right, so even if they go to a private school, there's a mandate that falls on us that we have to work to make that happen. But yes, I think your point is well taken, but given that this needs to be implemented this summer, I would recommend that we go ahead and adopt it as presented, and policy committee can work on this in the fall.
And receive these services, but sure, but yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
I think I had a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Budget is passed, but.
Yes.
Oh,
So did it? What were the votes?
183 to 29 on 1, and Article 2 is 125 to 83.
Interesting.
Wow, Article 2 is losing ground.
That's super interesting.
I guess I have to take that as a vote of trust. That,
Yeah.
The school board.
Article 2 is the one
We gotta
that
keep that.
keeps
just in case things go screwy.
the referendum.
No would mean we don't have to need a referendum.
Right.
Right, it would just be the budget meeting, and then it would not go to a vote. So the second step would be suggested.
What's the second step? Yeah, that wasn't clear. I thought it was canceling the evening, and I was tempted.
No, like, oh, if we could cancel the evening and just have a vote, that would be a different.
That was a hover.
Well, so thank you to the community. That's very strong support, and we continue to appreciate and strive to deserve that support. Okay, we do still have a good chunk of time ahead of us. Anything urgent on the subcommittee reports, policy? No, we meet in September, UTC.
Again, I'll bring a student list this next time. Great oral representation in lots of different categories, and not least of all, Asia Marzilli. But that's about all I'll say tonight, since we do have hours.
I hope not. Curriculum subcommittee has met, and you saw their output, and we'll see people in September. Wellness committee.
No, we still need scheduled dates for the fall.
Okay, strategic plan leadership team.
And then you still need to schedule days for the fall,
Okay,
and I'll get that done.
any other business? Any future agenda items? Anybody still have the energy for a public comment? Seeing none. Our next meeting is the data workshop. Remember, that's a special time and place. June 16th on a Monday at 5 p.m. And that will be in Ms. Hart's room. Enter through the central office door. And we'll have somehow that's open for public access. Yeah, and I think the key there is it has air conditioning, right?
No, well, no, this space gets subsumed by a
Okay,
laptop.
somebody is using this for the staff. Yeah, and Tuesday, June 24th is our next regular board meeting, 6 o'clock right back here. Any requests for information or follow-up? Seeing none, I would make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056A, evaluation of employees, administrators. Is there a second? A second. Any discussion? And I will note that there will be no vote except for adjournment after we come back out. All those in favor of executive session? Passes 5-0.
Okay, so we will turn off the Zoom.
Yep.